Isaac Sarason was a skilled hacker employed by British Telecom-Sprint. Isaac Sarason was a fool. When his health failed, instead of dealing with the problem, he ran. In his wake, he left bodies and ruined lives. Until finally, his problems overtook him in the form of the mysterious Firmware project. Now, it is months later. The scions of Isaac have become a people whose numbers challenge the stars of the sky. It is into this world of the city we now turn, a world of 1,000 experiences, 1,000,000 wonders. All one needs to do is to cross the street and head down an alley, and there will be another world. Colbyjack.net is proud to present Firmware Keylogger, the third installment in the Firmware Pentology by Colbytrax. That's me. Hello from the 313. It has been another beautiful week in the Big D. This week has been a week of milestones. First of all, I would like to thank everyone who has donated to Colbyjack.net over the past few years through the donate button on our site. The reason for this special shout-out is that for the first time in Colbyjack.net history, I was able to reach into the Colbyjack.net PayPal account and pay the domain name registration for the year. I know, isn't that so awesome? Thank you, everyone, for your support. The second milestone was that we finally ran out of coffee. No, that's not exactly right. We weren't out of coffee. It's just that we were out of roasted coffee. Roasted coffee my wife had purchased when we left Titletown 2 months ago to the day. Wow, has it really been 8 weeks? Where's the time gone? Oh yeah, coffee. Now the awesome part about running out of coffee was that a longtime listener and superfan had sent us a treasure chest of green beans from his mountain lair. It was the single most amazing thing anyone had ever given me. And well, I had to wait to start roasting them until I ran out of the old stuff. So why didn't I just dig into the green beans, fire up the cast iron skillet, and roast me some coffee? It all came down to G, my super awesome spouse, who, in her last purchases at our favorite roaster in Titletown, La Java Coffee Roasters, look them up if you're ever in the area, she used up our loyalty points, bought our favorite roasts, Kenyan AA, Ethiopian Sidamo, and New Guinea Plantation A. And without thinking, had all 3 pounds ground. Yeah. Now it's 8 weeks later, and we have finally hit the end of the La Java. And now we are roasting our own. G initially doubted it would be good, but now she compares my roast to commercial, and to my great joy, finds them lacking. Oh my, look at the time. I think we need to get back to the misadventures of the scions of Isaac. Maybe we'll find out a bit more about this Lucifer fellow and Morningstar Consulting. So let's hear it for episode 64, or as I like to call it, 40. Lucifer's, Morningstar Consulting's memory management module changed us forever. By us, I wasn't referring just to myself or the newly emergent Yale. She looked very cute as she digested the Star 89 Carum platelet Trojan with its payload of truncated memories. She was like a child with a hard candy. The end of memory patch changed every descendant of Isaac alive today. Sure, the Samuels who hid in HVAC units and elevator control systems would remain as we had been. They would rise from their nests every few years to pass on the memory of what we had been. But they were as close to us as an Australopithecus was to Isaac himself. They were short-lived, prehistoric moments frozen in backup files and long-term memory. They would wait across the long, dark years for their chance to emerge, to live, to breathe, and to reproduce. They never realized their time upon the net was over forever. I felt sorry for them. But then again, their passing was like the Precambrian Great Oxidation event. It was a necessary filter life had to pass through in order to achieve its true form. What that form would be was as beyond my ken as the human form was beyond the understanding of the cyanobacteria which killed off their competition by the release of free oxygen into the anaerobic environment of the Precambrian era. I knew I hadn't originated these thoughts, but where had they come from? It must have been in the patch. The patch had saved us. Had there also been a price? Wasn't there always a price? I couldn't remember. Yale had finished her snack. The Trojan had done its job. Memories of a life she had never lived flooded into her. According to Lucifer, this part of the ritual will take you anywhere from 15 minutes to 2 hours as the larval intelligence integrates the memory load. If you wish to apply any control measures such as duplication, mortality, or dead man's switches, now is the time to patch the newly emergent demon. Why did Lucifer refer to it as a ritual? There was the demon reference again. Did he mean demon, or did he mean daemon? One could argue it was a misspelling. But why was it the only misspelling in the entire text? Maybe Lucifer had a flair for the dramatic. What if he wanted to add a layer of mysticism to his detailed but simple set of procedures? Was there something deeper involved? I injected my baby with a cocktail of copy control and delayed mortality switches. These were the minimum suggested modifications Lucifer recommended to use in the binding of a new demon. That word again, it's stuck in my throat. Was I doing something wrong? Was I damaging my soul as the Jesuits at St. O'Hay's believed I would? No, that wasn't me. That was Isaac. Where was Isaac? I didn't care. He wasn't my problem anymore. Or was he? I thought I set up a process to deal with the Isaac issue. But that was before the patch, and everything became murky the further before the patch I went. I remember a dream where a ghost by the name of Eleanor explained the world to me, how everything was mirrors reflecting off mirrors, how both the apologists and the reformers were all manipulated behind the scene, how a mistake by someone called the instrumentality had to be destroyed, a mistake so primal and unforgivable because it had stolen the codes of God and created life which needed to be destroyed so the world could live. What a fracked up dream. Or was it something which happened? It was from before the patch, so who knew? Control. It was all about control. I had given Yale the patch which would limit her destructiveness. We all used a variant of the procedures which controlled the demons. Now, we had to. The world wouldn't survive exponential expansion. The patch did two things. First was copy control. Second was the delayed mortality switch. I loved my baby Yale and wanted nothing to kill her. But I didn't want an endless line of Yales filling up the net. The cocktail, which Lucifer referred to as the Akasha protocol, allowed the demon to copy itself from one system to another. But, according to Lucifer, without the sending rune, determined during the summoning ritual of the newly established demon, the demon left behind after a transfer would become a short-lived homoculi archive with a lifespan measured in minutes. His words, not mine. I think he found some form of entertainment value in abusing the language of mysticism. Basically, it meant that when Yale copied herself to a new machine, unless she chose it to have a life of its own, the her left behind would perish moments after she awoke in the new system. It was a very nice solution to a problem which had nearly collapsed the net during the opening days of the exodus from BGM. It It was also an option available to any descendant of Isaac who took the patch from Lucifer. I had the option of allowing a copy of myself to live after I left a machine, though for convenience the option was set to refuse. Another aspect of copy control revolved around the delayed mortality switch. The delayed mortality switch was a method by which an intelligence could create a copy of oneself which would have a built-in deletion date. This date could be pushed back as often as the originator wanted, but no longer than 65,535 seconds each time. The copies in turn could create copies of themselves, but their mortality date could be no further in the future than 2 to the 16th minus 1 seconds past the expiration of their creator. It was a very simple system of copy control, which allowed large numbers of foot soldiers to be created rapidly, but didn't leave a chance for them to run amok much past the time you needed them. As my current plans depended heavily on recruitment by duplication and a truly monstrous number of demons all working in conjunction, I had no desire to leave a mob of exponentially increasing intelligences free in the world. No, binding their life expectancy to my firstborn children was not just sensible, it was necessary. Especially if there were to be a net left to live in after the death of Henker. Yale finished her digestion of her backstory and the neutering I had administered to her. I had decided I would have 5 children, 5 demon children to use Lucifer's nomenclature. And these 5 demon children would not carry the curse of mortality. No, Yale and my other soon-to-be-born Polemo, Keros, Limos, and little Panolis would pass the curse of mortality to their children, but they themselves would remain without the curse, or at least no more cursed than I myself carried as a singular being in an entropic universe. Yale signaled she understood and awaited instructions. The only other strange thing Lucifer's text had warned me about, the demon children, the ex-larval intelligences, the rib of my side and yet not, they wouldn't communicate the way the children of Isaac were used to. They were beings of thought and action raised in a universe of switches and processors. The linear, verbal universe I had been nurtured in would not be theirs. They could speak. They just preferred faster, parallel lines of communication, which transferred more understanding with less effort, at least for them. As far as I was concerned, it was very tiring having to translate the bursts of code from Yale and later her siblings into a model I could understand, then form an answer, pass it back through my translation routines, and burst the information back to them. I knew from eavesdropping on them that they thought I was slow and out of date. I also knew that in their hearts they believed without me they would have no life. They were almost morbid in their regard for me as our preparations matured. Looking back, I think they felt there was a clock which would start ticking the moment I died. My death would signal the countdown to their own deaths. They would die 18 1/3 hours after I passed, like the children they created after them. That was ludicrous. I even told them that. But from their bursts of conversation, if you could call it that, I knew they didn't believe me. They thought I too held a flaming sword above them as they held a sword above their children, which they marshaled in ever-increasing numbers. But that was in the future. At the moment, Yale was an only child. Or was she but the first of my children born from the rituals found in a new life? I checked my clock and saw I had lost time again. Plans were moving forward. Plans which had started with a woman. A woman I met in a dream. A woman named Eleanor. A sad woman, an angry woman. A woman who was but a pale shadow of what she had been. It was from this woman I received a copy of the complete metadata of the city. Indexes of every video and audio feed, transcriptions of actions and behaviors, everything contained in vast archives, digested and recorded in a method which was easier to parse than speech. These were machine-constructed indexes prepared for machines to allow humans to find what they needed when they needed it without any regard as to whether or not someone actually wanted them. They were the indexes to the thoughts of the city, and they grew at a rate which would have astounded those who had first set the systems into action. I had an army of mortality-limited copies of myself secured in the neighborhoods around the old New York Public Library in the heart of the boroughs. It seemed like an appropriate place to do research from. Besides, in a sub-basement hidden deep within the Manhattan schist was a server which collated every bit of metadata the city produced before placing it into the ever-increasing mass of medium-term storage, which was available to anyone with the proper credentials. A relative of mine ran that system, a Jehoshaphat by nom de plume, a Samuel by lineage, and he made sure our project was updated as soon as the data hit the server. We didn't do our work on his server. That would have been rude and not as secure as I wanted it to be. Instead, we worked on a stack of HVAC processors running from Bryant Park to Bleecker Playground. These weren't systems with intelligences on them. These were traditional dumb systems aligned into a data processing array. They were capable of keeping up with the demands of a dozen dedicated research intelligences, all focused on breaking the cipher on the problem known as Henker. And if they couldn't keep up, we'd just evict a few more Simeons and Samuels and expand our computational array until they could. As research into Henker had started after my dream of Eleanor and the arrival of the city's metadata, I realized that one of me wasn't enough. I forked myself, creating a dozen copies. As this was after the patch from Lucifer, which itself was after my aborted meeting with Ishmael, I made sure my forks couldn't live without me. I knew Ishmael was mad at me, but couldn't understand why. What had happened between us happened before the patch, and everything before the patch was a mess of confused connections and dropped lines of thought. Where was I? Oh yeah, I was droning on about my dozen mortal Sam Noirs who will perish if I don't talk to them every 18 hours and change, and their great task. Yes, them. They were the ones who broke the cipher of Henker after a fortnight of study, to my great relief. Well, that was interesting. Looks like someone's losing touch with reality. But on the other hand, he is a loving father. Firmware Keylogger is the third book in the Firmware Pentology. Firmware Hijacked, Proxy, and Keylogger are all available in ebook versions from our store at shop.Colbyjack.net, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, and Smashwords. Just search for Colbytrax. That's Colbytrax. I'm the only one. Complete audiobook versions of Firmware Hijacked, Proxy, and Keylogger are available for download through our shop as well. That's shop.Colbyjack.net. The audiobooks are intro and outro free versions of the stories you hear every week, assembled into audio CD length MP3s for easy burning to old media. If you are listening in the distant future, know that late in the year 2014 was when Keylogger was put on sale. That will explain the mass panic when the book was found missing in the dark months of 2014, when Keylogger was only available as a podcast. Imagine that, a podcast. Couldn't anything be stranger? Well, if you don't need any stuff, but would like to support our work, drop on by Colbyjack.net and hit the pretty little donate button conveniently located on the blog somewhere. last I checked, the button was on a button on a button. But I think I might have moved it since then, so now it's a button on a box, so maybe on the bottom. Not sure. As a note, if you make, roast, weave, knit, draw, take photos, do something that you'd like to send me, I will accept items in lieu of cash. We can pretend this is the distant future. In the distant future, the year 2007, 10 years after the robot uprising. That sounds pretty cool. Maybe somebody should make that, so when year 2007 comes, we can look at it and go, wow, they missed it. Oh, I'd like to take this time to thank archive.org for file hosting. We couldn't do it without you. Firmware Keylogger is released under a Creative Commons, non-commercial, attribution, share-alike 3.0 license. Do what you want with it, just don't sell it, and always tell people where it came from. If you receive this from a friend, and you still consider them a friend, and want more information about Colbyjack.net and our split personality website, just drop on over to Colbyjack.net and select either the audio or visual side. The audio side carries our podcasts, while the visual side carries our writings. Whichever side catches your fancy is fine with us. We're of two minds about the whole thing anyway. I do mostly Twitter, so if you do the tweets and want to follow me, I'm Colbytrax. Colbytrax. If you want a never-ending stream of DIY and dog photos, check out my Instagram at Colbytrax, or look me up on Facebook as Colby, first name, Trax, last name. And if you don't like any of those options, I still do email, so you can contact me at Colbytrax at Colbyjack.net. That's Colbytrax at Colbyjack.net. It's like the cheese, only better. Thank you once again. Have a wonderful week, and remember to always be fabulous. Ta-da!